Hello, everybody. Welcome to another week of the Community Builders live chats. It's lovely to have your company. Thank you so much for joining us on Easter Eve. I know a lot of people are probably about to head off or have a lovely weekend. So thanks so much for making time for us. We really appreciate it. Now, I'm a relatively fresh face. I joined Rural Aid about 3 months ago now. And I'm just filling in for Lindsay Douglas today. The wonderful Lindsay is off doing, I think, her first love, which is show ring announcing at a particular Easter show. So we're very excited for her to be back in the ring after a year of COVID cancellations. So it's great to be here. I have seen a couple of you around. I have said hello to a couple of you. I've noticed in the chat a couple of you guys I've seen on my travels already so far, but if not, I'm sure it's just a matter of time. So lovely to virtually meet you. Again, thank you for joining us. I know everyone's probably in for a busy weekend. As always, let us know in the chat where you're from. Give us a bit of an emoji, say hello. Also, let us know a great reason to visit your town. We're super excited to hear about all corners of the globe that our viewers are from, so please let us know. Now, our return viewers will know that we do just a little bit of a test, a little bit of a technical test, just to check that your internet and audio are working correctly. So if you see the little pop-up box, feel free to click on that just to make sure that your systems are working effectively for you. You'll see some instructions floating around as well. So just make sure that your browser is compatible so that you can get the most out of these sessions. If not, we always strive to get them uploaded online as quickly as we possibly can after the session so that you can go back and check anything that you might have missed as well. We'd like to start today by saying a big thank you to our sponsor, Holdmark. The wonderful people at Holdmark make things like this possible. They're helping Rural Aid support small towns in rural and remote Australia in developing stronger futures in the face of adversity. So Holdmark are responsible for transforming many of Sydney's urban landscapes to quality living, working and playing environments. They're a privately owned property development, construction and investment group founded over 25 years ago. During this time, Holdmark has become one of Sydney's most trusted and respected property groups. They've spent the past 25 years building these well-designed properties in Sydney in some of their most sought-after locations. In the last 10 years, Holdmark's project portfolio has grown considerably with new award-winning developments that have paved the way for an exciting future down the pipeline. And if we have anyone from the New England here, you might also recognise the Holdmark name. They helped us out with our town's event, which has only just finished up in Barrabin. It's just a wonderful event where, you know, Holdmark, thanks to Holdmark, we give the town $100,000 and 60 wonderful volunteers come down and make the town over, and it really is just such a wonderful event. So that's where you might be recognising the Holdmark name from. All right, now most of you will see that we have the chat on the right-hand side of the screen, and thanks to everyone who has been signing in and saying hello. It's lovely to see you guys all getting involved. Hello to you, and it's great to have you on board, and hopefully you guys all get a bit of useful information out of today's session as well, because that's what it's really about, is sharing the secrets to success. Using the little thumbs up emoji to let me know if you're a returning community builder, or if you're new, send me a smiley face. I suppose I should probably put a little smiley face in there as well. Welcome aboard. For those of you joining us for the first time, Rural Aid welcomes you to the Community Builders series of free webinars supporting small towns in rural and remote Australia. Now, these live chats are free, which is just wonderful. They're all about connection, and we actually, you know, connect people from all over Australia, but it goes a bit wider than that as well. We connect people from international centres as well. So if you're from a country that's outside of Australia, let us know and we'll say hello. This current series, this is series 4, is based on the reinvention of small towns, and we've got a cracking episode for you today. And it really focuses on, the series has really focused on population decline, the impact of drought, industry and infrastructure, and other challenges that have faced, you know, these small rural communities, which I'm sure we all know very intimately. We want to provide the solutions and the tips and tricks to, you know, from the people in the know to those people who are hoping to know. And we call those people the community builders, because you're looking to build your community. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners Australia-wide for their continuous connection to the land. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. This presentation is being recorded and all handouts and links will be available from the Rural Aid and Bank of Ideas website after the event. You can also join our Facebook page, which a link has just popped up for. A great little Facebook page where we share tips and news and ideas and solutions and a bit of inspiration as well. All right, now, if you're new to these webinars, each episode we hear from our resident, well-renowned community building specialist on a whole host of examples. The wonderful Peter Kenyon from Bank of Ideas, he's obviously a wealth of knowledge and he's assisted more than 2,000 communities worldwide in their community building initiatives and programs. Peter, hello, a very warm welcome to you.
Very warm welcome, and great to have you in the seat. Today is sadly the last day of this particular series, and boy, what a great series we've had. 8 fantastic episodes all over the country, all the way from WA through to Tasmania. We've had stories kind of like coming through, and it's been great. And today, what an exciting area to kind of like focus on. But given the fact that we've had Margaret from Mininu and Adam from Carnamah as regular members, I just want to say I drove through the Midwest the other week and I drove through these 2 towns. And you know what? I love the positivity of both of them. I love how Carnamah has kind of like developed this huge statue called, you know, the rock solid one out of concrete to say, you know, we've got a rock solid future. And I love getting into Mininu just to see the simplicity, but the positivity of signs like that. And again, I just really love those 2 particular towns, the creativity, the art that's going on in them, and really just want to salute both you, Margaret and Adam, for, you know, what you're doing in your towns. It's just amazing. And I believe Carnamah are about to build the biggest tractor in Australia as part of their kind of like portfolio of attractions, why you need to go. So before you die, visit these 2 great Midwest towns in WA. Now, today we're going to be talking about streetscapes and infrastructure. One of the programs the Bank of Idea runs is called Life in the Pass Lane. And I think that one of the greatest assets that every one of our small towns have is really its heritage. Each town has amazing heritage, both built heritage, Indigenous heritage, story heritage. And one of the assets that we've got to mobilise is that. One of the towns I love to go into is Kalgoorlie. It always reminds me, our Prime Minister Keating once said the reason he loved to be in Melbourne was just to perv on the buildings. Well, you know what? That's how I feel when I ever go into Kalgoorlie in the goldfields. It's just got one of the most amazing kind of like streetscapes. Has an amazing pub on every street corner. And really, you know what? It's one of the things that they are really promoting as one of those attractions. Again, if you haven't seen Kalgoorlie, boy, is it one of those great outback towns. I mentioned last week Lockhart. Lockhart, you know, that small New South Wales town doing so much to kind of like reinvent itself, and you can see the attractions it's got. And one of them they promote is simply being the historic veranda town. And again, part of their promotion and the way that they've restored the verandas, the signage and whatever. And again, as you drive through that town, it's certainly one of those attractions. I love the fact that in WA, a Rotary Club raising money has created what they call the Pioneer Way. It's Route 120, runs from the town of York right down there through down to Albany. And again, they put a treasure hunt together, and most of the clues that are given and the questions that are asked to win the prizes all relate to the heritage of this amazing collection of about a dozen historic towns that run down there. And again, it's their infrastructure they particularly focus on. So again, if you want to just see how a group of towns are marketing themselves and have developed up this wonderful family kind of like activity called the Pioneer Way, a treasure hunt for the family, where you pay $60 and you can win a whole pile of fabulous prizes. Have a look at that. It's called the Pioneer Way. I love the fact that every one of our towns has something unique, different about them, and often it is our heritage. Out there in Cobar, you know, again, got this amazing pub, the Great Western, and it is got the longest continuous veranda in the Southern Hemisphere. That is worth promoting. I love the fact that wherever you go out there in the outback areas, we've got this amazing collection of bush pubs. And again, it can be an attraction on its own. Go to the place like Walgett out there and see those pubs in the scrub that's out there, out from Walgett and towards towards the towns out there. Just amazing stuff. And again, these pubs are worth kind of like looking at and how we might kind of like promote them. I love being in Gayndah, and where you've got this amazing clothing store there called Mellors, and the fact it's got really the only original flying fox that still functions. They still use it. And again, it's an attraction. It's a reason why you got to kind of like stop in this town. And really, isn't that what tourism's about? It's about getting people to stop, get out of their cars and begin to put their hands in their pockets and spend it on local products and services. And again, it's about using that. I also remember, going back well over 20 years, a mayor there called Peter Gayndah. Peter was a great community builder, and one of the things he introduced as mayor was an annual heritage fund. I think it was about $10,000 at the time, and it funded up to 4 businesses each year over a 5-year period to do up their fronts, to do up their signage, to restore their verandas. And boy, today, Gayndah benefited from that particular initiative a few years ago. And I thought, you know what, many of our small towns could really begin to look at something like that simple heritage fund to kind of like help people. And you know what, you don't even need to have the building functioning today to still have it. And I love going into the little West Australian town of Yalgoo there in the Midwest, where, you know what, here they have the site of the world's very first parcel bomb explosion. Guy by the name of Solomon, who was building the post office and the store at the time, diddled a few people, and the result of that, they sent him a parcel, blew off his arm, and he couldn't finish building his building. You know what? What a great story. And again, that can be part of kind of like the tourism. And I'm aware that story, they've even done a light and sound show around it. So, you know what? Boy, what we can do with our buildings. Probably the most photographed structure we have in Australia is Sydney Harbour, and we're going to be talking today about Art Deco. Well, it's probably the most famous Art Deco structure we have. But then up there in the Pilbara, we got this other place called Wim Creek. It has a connection, and that is the same company that actually built and provided the steel for Sydney Harbour only did it for one other structure in Australia, an output pub called Wim Creek, where the steel from that same Glasgow company built it. You know, this is the sister building. Boy, can you play on that as a bit of a story in terms of it. And then again, how we can begin to use signage and how that can be effective. And again, it's just great to see how people are doing it. That Mackey's building, in Holbrook in New South Wales. And I love in Geraldton how that main street, they've captured their buildings. And I particularly love this one, which is, again, the theme of today, looking at Art Deco in particular. But again, as you stare at the building, how you can actually have that further interpreted. And again, how people are using it. And so Art Deco, this is a bit of the theme today. We're going to be talking about this great town called Leeton and how it's taken its wonderful Art Deco architecture and have turned that into a festival and walking tours and all of that type of stuff. Art Deco as a term, though, didn't appear until the 1960s. It was called modernism back there, but it was instigated in 1925 when, following World War I, people wanted a sense of a whole new positivity, and artists and architects came together and started playing around with modernism that we now kind of like called Art Deco. And it all came out of this exhibition in Paris in 1925. But it didn't take long before it spread all over the world, particularly in terms of architecture. And Australia was one country in the late 1920s and 30s that we really borrowed this architectural style. It's all about symmetry. It's all about balance. It's often commemorated the connection to the sea and to transport and the use of new buildings. And across rural Australia, we've got the most incredible collection of pubs. Have a look at some of them from some of our diverse towns that we've got. Some amazing stuff, particularly there in the river. If you're there in the Riverina of South Australia, some of the best pubs are all Art Deco. Up there in Mildura, isn't that Grand Hotel just kind of like stunning and whatever in terms of it? That one on the left is one of my favourites. Unfortunately, today it's a McDonald's store, but you know what? It was built as the ultimate nautical kind of like example of Art Deco. But wherever you go, you've got that. Look at that Mission, what's called Mission Art Deco down there on the bottom. But again, we have got thousands of these kinds of buildings across rural Australia. And boy, today the interest in Art Deco, particularly amongst younger generations, is phenomenal. And it's well worth kind of like seeing if you've got something, how can you do it? But it wasn't just pubs. This was the era when the picture theatre was at its height. And again, boy, we got some stunning stuff. That Atheum one there down there in Junee in New South Wales. What a stunning kind of like example of that as well. And wherever you go, we've got buildings, public buildings during the 30s. Many of the town halls and public buildings, particularly in Wheatbelt, Western Australia, were actually built kind of like in the Art Deco style. That amazing one you got up there out of the little town of Beverley, for example. Fabulous kind of like civic building and picture theatre that's built in that little small town of Beverley in the Wheatbelt of WA. Have a look at some of these classics, the one in Swan Hill and the one there in Wang in Victoria. Just classic stuff. And again, when you got this stuff, boy, can it actually be a real attraction to your town. Wherever you go, we've got some amazing stuff when it comes to Art Deco. And in particular, the T&G Mutual Group built some spectacular stuff, particularly in a lot of our regional centres. But another group called the Commonwealth Bank are famous for the way they built in Art Deco. And again, there is a whole collection of Commonwealth Bank buildings across Australia that were all built in that Art Deco kind of like style in terms of where it's at. But also we developed public amenities in terms of sports. It was the era of the car, and so many of our garages were kind of like done in Art Deco style. And wherever you look in our parks and whatever, you can see examples of this thing called Art Deco. And again, it's worth looking. Has your town got some of the stuff that you can actually feature? But it wasn't even just buildings. Art Deco reached into our cars, our furniture, jewellery, clothing. It was one of those styles that influenced kind of like in so many different ways. And boy, it is an exciting style. And to see some of our towns now developing Art Deco museums and putting that together is just quite exciting. The town that really put Art Deco on the map as a major tourist attraction was a town in New Zealand called Napier. And some of you may have visited Napier. But Napier on the 3rd of February had one of the most devastating earthquakes ever to hit that country. 261 people lost their lives on the 3rd of February, 1931, when that town was kind of like demolished in a massive way by a massive earthquake. What was interesting is that a whole pile of young architects from Auckland University were all bussed down into Napier to help to rebuild the city. And they're all imbued with Art Deco. And the result is that we have got now in this place probably one of the greatest concentrations of Art Deco buildings anywhere in the world. But you know what? People didn't really value it. And right up to 1986, this was happening. People were demolishing them. And along came a UN mission looking at tourism and said to locals and the civic leaders there, you know what you got here? Probably the best kind of like concentration of Art Deco buildings anywhere. Only Miami Beach would probably rival you for the biggest collection. And people then, back there in the late 80s, as late as the 80s, said, hang on, we've got to stop this kind of like demolition and begin to start using this amazing kind of like collection we've got. And they started repainting them. They started kind of like really focusing on street and really starting to say, we are the Art Deco kind of like capital of the world. And boy, has that been absolutely phenomenal in terms of their tourism. It's why people go and build upon it. They create an Art Deco Society. And if you want to have the greatest experience, go to, basically it's the first weekend in February. They put on the most spectacular 3-day event, the Art Deco event there. They have close to 100 events that happen over those 3 days, all commemorating the amazing stuff around Art Deco and that particular era. And that really, I think, inspired lots of communities to start thinking about it. And I can remember in 2002 debating with the mayor of Innisfail, who wanted me to comment on the new economic strategy on the ABC. And I had to say to him, look, I can't even find mention of the number one economic asset you got in your report. The word Art Deco does not appear. He didn't even know what it was. And people listening said, you know what? We've got this amazing collection. Bit like Napier. They'd got wiped out in 1918 by a cyclone, not an earthquake. And they started to rebuild the main street. And boy, have you got some amazing tropical Art Deco. And we see that as probably the key regional or small town when it comes. And following that 202 encounter, a group formed themselves into an Art Deco Society, and with the help of the Australian Art Deco Society group, really started to take what they've got, this amazing collection. Have a look at that cathedral, classic Art Deco. And boy, again, starting to repaint the stuff. Look at the town hall down there on the bottom right and whatever. And started to put in place a whole pile of events to really use it. Again, if you're looking at what you could do with your architecture, particularly around the Art Deco, have a look what they've done. It is just, again, a great example of a people's movement and people beginning to say, you know what, we've got this amazing asset. Right up to only about 18 years ago, they just ignored it. And then they began to see, you know what, we can make this one of our key attractions. But there is even more to it in terms of what they've done with it, the way that they have just marketed it as a continuous thing, not just as an event town, but as a place where you can come. But you know what? There is another town that I love. It's my favourite town. It's probably the second nicest town in Australia after the one you come from. It's a place called Leeton. And we've got an amazing woman there that I first met again around about 2003 when she was the deputy mayor of the New Zealand town of Invercargill, Jackie Kruger. So Jackie, how about coming on stage? And you are now the general manager of the Shire of Leeton. And Leeton, this New South Wales town, built to kind of like all part of that irrigation era. They actually had that two great carriers. They had the Burley Griffin, husband and wife were the same people who did Canberra, did Leeton. I believe, though, that the wife didn't get really the credit she deserved. She was the one who was the driving force in Leeton. I think the husband kind of like was on a coattails, but he seemed to get all the credit. But tell us about Leeton. Jackie, you've always been an amazing community builder. I remember your days back there in Invercargill when you were the deputy mayor and you were driving community-based employment initiatives, and you helped to reinvent Invercargill in terms of the amazing town it is today. And now we find you the general manager, not as a councillor, but as the general manager of this town called Leeton. Tell us a bit about you, tell us about Leeton, and tell us about what you're doing with Art Deco.
Thanks very much, Peter. And good afternoon to everyone that's on the screen today with us in Australia and across the world. And I'm just reminded through this introduction from Peter and the Bank of Ideas about all the things that have inspired us over the years that have come through and that are now being enunciated once again this afternoon through this fabulous rural aid program. Yes, it's coming flooding back, and the word inspiration comes to mind. And Peter's always been an inspiration. It's been an absolute pleasure working with him and being inspired by him from New Zealand days. And when I finally got to Leeton and we wanted to do some inspiring things in our local community, he immediately came to mind, and he's helped to, I suppose, helped us to bring together some good ideas, and we're now putting them in action. So I'm actually born and bred in South Africa. I moved to New Zealand in 1996 and then across the ditch to Tamworth in 2012 to take up a position at Tamworth Regional Council. And then I've been with Leeton Shire since 2015 as General Manager and thoroughly enjoyed working with a very constructive and cohesive council as we seek to make Leeton the best place it can be. Now, some people on the screen might not know where Leeton is. We're sort of somewhere between Wagga Wagga and Griffith. We're an hour 20 west of Wagga and 50 minutes shy of Griffith. It's slightly more west than us, and those are our two bigger regional centres. But Leeton itself is a fine shire. We're a postage stamp size relative to most rural councils, but we have quite a large population of 11,500 people. And I look forward to taking you through this afternoon. Peter, do you want to ask me another question or can I keep talking? think he's muted, so I think that means I can probably keep chatting away. I too would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people today on whose land I'm sitting on today, and would like to acknowledge the elders past, present and future as we commence today's catch-up. And I think I've done the overview of Leeton for you, but Leeton's not a town that commenced because there was a river or a pub or a seaside venue. It literally is a town that the government came along on the day after being persuaded by Sir Samuel McCaughey to really invest in irrigated agriculture. They did, obviously came and did all their surveying, must have stood on the hill at Leeton. Now, you can see from the photo on the slide, it's a very flat area in general, but it's got this magnificent spine of water travelling through it. It comes down from Burrinjuck Dam that was built in the late 1800s, early 1900s. The water comes down the Murrumbidgee River and then is taken off into the Murrumbidgee irrigation scheme that turns this magnificent soil and into the most magnificent variety of plants you can imagine being grown. So we really are a food and fibre mecca, and it's all thanks to this brilliant water combined with the brilliant climate and brilliant soil. So Leeton itself was declared as, you know, we'll set up shop in Leeton, everyone, build the main Murrumbidgee irrigation scheme from the centre of Leeton, and from there it travelled north, and today it covers about 144,000 hectares of land. So just practicing moving on here. Today, there are about 4 things that we're very famous for. So first of all, we're the home of Australia's rice industry. Rice, 98% of rice is grown in the Riverina area, which stretches along the Murray and the Murrumbidgee. And the SunRice head office and the SunRice processing plant is in Leeton. This is a very key commodity in our community because in a normal year, when we get normal rice yields, we're able to support 600 permanent jobs and generate about $400 million in our local community. So I just want to let everybody know that Leeton is the rice capital of Australia. Moving on then, just one more thing about our rice. We grow the highest grade rice in the world with the least amount of water. So we have had a real commitment to making sure that our rice is very sustainable going into the future. Talking about being the food and fibre centre that we are, the little graph on the left-hand side will show you, if you look at the bar on the far left, the volume and the variety of stuff that's grown in our particular neck of the woods relative to a whole lot of other places that are also known for growing vast amounts of produce. But I just want to draw to your attention that, as well as rice, there's cotton, there's citrus, there's grapes. In fact, this particular region grows about 60% of Australians' wine grapes, mainly for bulk wine making. But we do have an increasing number of boutique wineries developing as well. And we're also increasingly seeing nuts in our particular part of the world, including walnuts and almonds in particular. Very importantly about Leeton, that we like to hang our hat on, is we're a welcoming shire, and our refugees and new migrants are very special to us. And at Leeton, we have the most magnificent mayor who personally welcomes every single new resident into our shire, takes them around, orientates them to the area, and people remain very loyal to us and us to them. And it's so much easier to create a cohesive community when people are welcomed in that sort of way. But the real reason we're meeting today, as Peter alluded to earlier on, was just Leeton's decided to lay claim to being the Art Deco capital of regional Australia. we appreciate that there's a lot of good competition out there. But in Leeton itself, in the main street, we've got over 45 properties that are in the Art Deco, of the Art Deco era, that we think are really significant. And we've actually, Art Deco enthusiasts who perhaps understood and knew it all before us, always used to come and do tours here. And as Peter said, it's in the latter years that we've decided that we really need to embrace this built environment that we have. It's such a special opportunity. So let's make the absolute most of it. So, so that's the focus of today, is how to build on these assets. So I first want to just touch on some of our key assets. These are our features, main features. So you saw in the advert for today, in fact, our Roxy Theatre. Now this has been in continuous use for over 90 years. It was built as a cinema originally, and then they added a stage at some later on point. Now our Roxy Theatre has got a second floor in it, and it is a state significant listed building, so it's of significant heritage value. I'll come back to a bit more about the Roxy Theatre in a minute. Another vitally important building in our town is the Water Conservation and Irrigation Commission building. So when all the engineers came to Leeton to build this magnificent irrigation scheme with no computers, no calculators, still blows my mind that in a flat area they were able to make water run downhill. That in itself is a remarkable feat. But this particular building, where all this amazing stuff happened and this nation-building initiative commenced, was in 2015 a derelict building filled with pigeons, lots of broken windows, and a lot of damp getting into the building, and it was starting to rot. There had been some people that were trying to purchase the building for various commercial reasons, but the state government at the time obviously had a valuation on the building that people couldn't meet. They weren't prepared to meet what people were prepared to offer, and it just sat and got worse and worse. Council started to get a bit worried about this because we could identify that it was so significant. So we put in a cheeky offer to the government of $1 and said, look, if you're not going to release it to the commercial side of the world to do something with, how about giving it to council for $1? And we knew someone that was going to have a barbecue with the Deputy Premier, and we asked him if they wouldn't mind just sneaking this letter into his pocket and making sure that he got it directly. So the long and the short of that is the Mayor and I were in Sydney at Parliament House for an entirely different reason to do with a swimming pool. But while we were there, we were given the great news that we had been given this building for $1. Now, we were delighted, but at the same time we were thinking, oh my goodness, now we've got a serious liability that we have to do something with. But as always, when you think positively, you've got an eye to the future, things come through, and we were able to actually access some drought funding. We've had a bit of a rough 2 years of drought, which is now, of course, totally ended. But during that drought period, we were able to get some drought funding, which has enabled us to turn that building, paint it, freshen it up, and I'll show you in a minute some of the things that we've got up to inside the building. Now, immediately across the road from this building is another important one in Leeton called the Historic Hydro. This is where special guests and all the engineers used to live, and they would walk. They'd live, eat, I suppose, have dances and all the rest in this beautiful hydro hotel, and then walk across the road and go to work in the building I showed you in the previous slide. Now, this is a magnificent building. It's in private ownership, but someone has gone into the pub and painted the pub with all the stories of Leeton's history, which really makes for a very magnificent visit. So this is our historic hydro motor inn. And they're not so much in the typical Art Deco feature, but another very grand building, and this was the private home of Sir Samuel McCaughey, one of the people that was very persuasive in getting the Murrumbidgee irrigation area established. And it's his home on a farm called North Yanco. And when he passed away, the property was donated to the government, and it went to the Department of Education, and it became a school for teaching young people how to farm and how to undertake agricultural practices. And to this day, it's the Yanco Agricultural College, and it has a very good reputation. Now, when you enter this building, there's a magnificent stained glass window at the top of the stairwell, and the school very kindly, during school term and during the school day, will actually allow visitors into the building as well. Now, I've just touched on these because these are some of our more large, well, they're the larger, very impressive buildings. But as always, when it comes to Art Deco, and a lot of things in life, it's the smaller things that also count. So in our 45 buildings in the CBD, you'll see beautiful tile work that's done. We've got stained glass windows. And it's interesting, Peter, look at our Commonwealth Bank. It's just the same sort of design as the one that you put up in your slides earlier, which shows the trend through the Commonwealth Bank. And that's recently been refurbished by them and painted, and it's looking very swell in our main street. But anyway, we're wanting to emphasise our existing assets for economic development purposes, and I'm now going to just run around and tell you a few things that we're doing to make sure that we're harnessing the full potential. So first of all, we're scrubbing up our main street. It's not very different to what you said earlier, but council's decided to put a whole lot of funds aside, and this year we will be painting 24 buildings in the main street. So you can see on the left-hand side how yes, a bit crummy and not very good looking. It's not in very good state of repair, the facade is. But then this is the first of the 24 that's been completed, and we've now got 23 to go. But there's nothing better than a lovely fresh streetscape to draw to people's attention all these wonderful Art Deco facades. So that's an investment that the Council of Leeton Shire has made. It's been taken up in collaboration with our shop owners, who are contributing about 40% of the cost, and Council's putting in 60% of the cost. And we've been delighted with the take-up. And we think that when it's all finished, it's like having a big smile, with a smile with a mouthful of beautiful white teeth, except in the case of these buildings, they'll be all different colours. But it will really help to enhance the town and build community pride, and also build the potential of our Art Deco theme being a real tourist draw card. So that scrubbing up work is happening. Moving on to the next thing, we're also trying to really firm up our branding. So these, for example, are Christmas flags, that banners that went up last Christmas, and we especially made them for Leeton to keep in that Art Deco theme, so that we can keep reiterating that branding in everything that we do. I don't have a slide of it, but we've even done that with our Christmas decorations. So the Christmas decorations that we've got have also maintained that Art Deco theme. And staying on brand and keeping repeating it is going to do a whole host of good things to make sure that we really position ourselves as a regional Art Deco capital in Australia, and also make the local community very aware of what we need to be proud of and protect. Talking about Walter Burley Griffin, and yes, you're right, Peter, he did get all the credit, and his wife Marion did most of the beautiful landscaping work around Leeton, and we think that he practiced on Leeton before he went to Canberra, so that's our claim to fame. Now, this is just an example of a work of art that's been developed called Anamorphic Resonance, which is, you can't appreciate it fully from a single photo, but it's a whole lot of odd designs that are, hanging on a structure in a three-dimensional way. And when you position yourself in a certain position, you're able to see Walter Burley Griffith's face, and at night it lights up and casts a shadow onto the water tower at the back, giving the whole face of Walter Burley Griffith. So it's quite a fun bit of artwork that also brings about some activity at night time. So that's just to recognise the contribution of Walter Burley Griffith to the design of Leeton. Moving on to other artworks that we've done, which I'll come back to drawing it all together shortly, but we really want to be able to tell the authentic stories of who we are as a community. And this artwork, as you enter into Yanko, is celebrating all those engineering feats of, designing this magnificent irrigation area. And the pipe work that's been put around it by the artist John Wood has been specially done in Art Deco colours, and it represents the flow of water around the region. So these are the sorts of things that you can add value to your local stories by bringing into place artworks that help to tell the story of your history. Of course, one of the things that I really want to focus on today is there's the outside part of architecture, but then there's the richness of what happens inside that's as important, maybe even more important, arguably, especially if you want to make sure that it is yielding its full potential 24/7. So this is the inside of our beautiful Roxy Theatre, and you can see the stage area. If you look to the back, you will be able to see the stage area. You'll see the stage in the front, and then you'll see the first floor in this theatre in the background area. Now, this particular Roxy Theatre serves both as a cinema and also as a theatre for live performances. But we also then make a third use of it and use it as a civic space. And at the moment, our Roxy Theatre is about to go through a refurbishment. We've purchased 2 properties immediately next door, and we're hoping to create better dressing rooms to bring the theatre up to full compliance and proper DDA access, and make sure that it's a safe functioning theatre, but that we feel that if we can get that right, we'll attract even more shows. And I'll speak a bit more about what's going to happen in the Roxy Theatre in a minute. So at this point in time, I just want to know if Alicia could maybe play a video, because one of the things that talking about, it's not just the physical side of your heritage, it's what you do with it. Just want to do a little video of our Art Deco Festival, which we relaunched 2 years ago. Thank you. That's just to give you a bit of a taste of the vibe of it, but it was such a tremendous weekend, and it was absolutely enjoyed by everyone that attended. As I said, it was a relaunch. We had tried it before on 2 occasions, and it was okay, but we decided to do it with a real whiz bang this time, and it drew more than 4,000 people to Leeton. Over 30% of those came from places outside of Leeton, including Western Australia, South Australia, Victoria, ACT, and Queensland. So we were delighted by the variety. We even claimed there was one lot of people that came from Germany. We're not sure that they came all the way just for our festival, but we even had overseas people attend as well. It really was delightful. We attracted $25,000 in sponsorship from businesses in the wider region, and another 25,000 in kind. And council put in a good dollop of money as well, which really took us from just having an ordinary festival to an extraordinary one, which has attracted a lot of people. And we look forward to running one again this year. Of course, last year COVID managed to put a spoke in the wheel there. But what was really good with the festival was getting the whole town involved. So we had all our shops in town having decorated their windows. A particular sort of treasure hunt was put in place where different shops had different treasures hidden away. Well, not really hidden, but people had to go in and actually look for them, which meant that all the visitors to town who participated in the treasure hunt were really making progress getting through all the shops in town. So they saw a lot of business for the weekend by participating in this program. It created wonderful vibe. So even despite the, even though people might have been shopping for the treasure hunt purposes, it still was a delightful vibe. And I think it really helped to bring our local community on board, because a lot of people even had said to me in the beginning of the relaunch of the festival, why are we wasting our time on this? But actually, by the end of the festival, everybody said, now we know why we're doing it, really adds value, let's keep doing it again. And at this point in time, it's been decided to hold it on an annual basis. This is just to give you a taste of how everybody got into the mood. There was a lot of dressing up. Even our local fireys decided to make sure that they were in theme. We've got storerooms full of pianos ready for the next one, and a lot of silhouettes that we put down Chelmsford Place just to create the vibe and the theme. There was a billy cart derby, I think that's what you call it. It gave me a few heavy duties as a general manager, because quite a few very enthusiastic fathers pushed those carts very hard and very fast, and there were a few spills. But at the end of the day, this was a great trip. It drew a good crowd and was thoroughly enjoyed by everyone. It was interesting because all the families would spend time together with fathers and kids building these billy carts, and so that in itself, in the lead up, has got to have been a good thing. Of doing a fun thing like that together, spending time together as a family. While I've just focused on the last two slides on what we do outside with these, to build on the Art Deco theme, there's also the wonderful opportunities inside. So at the Hydro Hotel that I showed you earlier, we had a what's the word that I'm looking for? We go gambling, like a gambling centre, all dressed up in 1920s dress, where people could play their roulette. And I'm not a very good gambler, I don't know all the names, play the different card games, but it was a very festive night, very well received. And we did that immediately after doing the whole theme of how to host a murder in the Hydro Hotel, which was people participated with great vigor and enthusiasm, and it was very interesting to find out who eventually shot who and how to host a murder. It was good fun. And then the photos on the right-hand side are more around having a flappers and felons ball in our beautiful Roxy Theatre, which was a great night for all involved. Now, with the Roxy Theatre, our vision going forward is not just to have this beautiful building and to have occasional shows and occasional cinemas. We actually want to see that theatre used 24/7. So we're going to be launching what's called RIPA, which is the Roxy Institute of Performing Arts. And we're about to go into this great refurbishment, but to give people a taste or a sense of what it is that we're wanting to bring into that theatre, we're about to run a beautiful Shakespeare show on Henry V, which has had enormous community collaboration. So we've got a great many people, not just the actors, but also people making costumes, all the stage work, doing the design work. It in itself the whole program is building community and all ages are getting involved. And this is to be a taste of what's to come when the Roxy is all fully refurbished, when this Regional Institute of Performing Arts will be launched. And we hope to service not just the Western Riverina, but in fact, lots of regions in Australia, and we're working very closely with the National Institute of Dramatic Art to form a partnership with them. So watch that space. Coming back to the building that I said earlier was full of pigeons and was very damp and wet and broken glass windows and all the rest. As you can see, it's been beautifully refurbished, and we now have our Leeton Museum and Art Gallery established in that building. So when you walk in now, you turn to the left and we have a permanent exhibition telling in the most compelling and interesting way the story of our water history, the whole formation of the Murrumbidgee Irrigation Scheme and Leeton's role in that. So can you believe that we were the birthplace of the Murrumbidgee Irrigation Scheme and irrigation area, but we didn't have a place to tell that story. Now, taking this beautiful building, getting it refurbished, we've been able to create a museum that tells that story, and it in itself is now, bus trips are just going directly to Griffith, for example, are now all stopping in Leeton to have a look at this museum that is really becoming very well known in the region. Similarly, on the right-hand side, we have a magnificent area for showing exhibitions. So the wall space has been made as a beautiful canvas for putting up various works of art. And we've already, I think, in the year we've been operating, I think we've already had 9 or 10 exhibitions, one of which was a paid exhibition, but the rest is all our local people. And boy, do you find that you've got some local talent in your community when you can offer them a beautiful space to show their work. Just want to also mention what is so key with all of this is packaging stuff. If you just have something all on its own, often it doesn't sort of give enough impetus for people to come off the mule and the skirt highway. So Leeton is one of those places that we've got the skirt running one way and the mule running the other, and we're sort of over there. So unless you were particularly coming to Leeton for a specific purpose, tourists generally just stayed on the highways. Whereas what we're wanting to do now is package things properly and make sure that people think, gee, it's worth our while to get off that main highway and come and visit the Shire of Leeton and its 2 small towns of Whitton and Yanco. Now, this particular picture here is of taken in the township of Yanco, where we have an entrance to our lyrics, landscapes and lintels art trail. So this isn't Art Deco. This is more it's a trail that you drive along, and I'm just deleting that so I can see it. And then behind it, you'll see one of the stunning works of art that we have on this trail by an artist called Carla Gotchins, where you can actually walk in between the art, and it's actually made to be disabled access as well. And it tells the story of Whitton that had to survive. It was the oldest town in the MIA. It was a fully functioning town before the irrigation scheme ever got here. A lot of bullock wagons stopped there on their way south to Melbourne. And in Whitton, even though it was thriving with lots of pubs and even had banks and post offices and schools and courts, at this particular place, unfortunately, had to endure 2 fires. And so that tells the story, but embedded in those beautiful works of art are some poetry from Henry Lawson that have been added just to enhance it. And packaging things up really makes for really good opportunities to get around. Similarly, we've put things together with 4 local councils. Those are the 4 mayors of 4 councils called Murrumbidgee Trails, which helps to package up wares that we've got to share with the tourists. And coming up next, because you've always got to have an eye on the future, is we're looking in that small town of Lytton. We've got some funding to put up murals and also a work of art on the water tower that will be of a soldier visible from the memorial gate. We're looking at finally giving Marion Griffin a bit of kudos by getting our Chelmsford Place town square done up in a grand, bold way with a lot of Art Deco themes. And then thirdly, we're looking at actually putting in place an Art Deco touring route, which will be an official signboarded route. If we can, we seem to have had quite a bit of luck with our roads department in New South Wales to actually get travellers off the main highways and following this touring route, which will take them through Lytton, through Leeton, through Yanco and back out onto the new or the third highways. So, Peter, that's a summary from me of all the things that we're trying to get done in Leeton, and I'm happy to take any questions. You're on mute. Okay, we can hear you again.
Yep. You're always remembered as an opportunist, Jackie, and what you've done with that building and the way you got it for $1 and whatever. Can I ask you one question? How do you get local people on side? You know, council beginning to spend money on art galleries and tourism and Art Deco festivals and really pushing that in a very traditional farming community. Any comments there? How do we get people on side? How do we get people to want to embrace diversifying our economy, particularly in the tourism?
I think it's a multifaceted approach. There's everything from education, but it needs to be done in a fun way that actually engages people so that they might not know what they've been educated about, but by the time they finish, they think, gee, this is something worthwhile. That's certainly an approach. We have, through our Art Deco Festival, formed a very enthusiastic band of volunteers who have contributed significantly, and I think that enthusiasm is contagious and it sort of spreads out to the rest of the community. And then, as I mentioned, just going through the presentation, having the shops involved, even if they don't know about it the first time, helping them through it, they see the benefit, and then I think people start to look with new eyes and fresh eyes. So I suppose it's about awareness raising and exposure, but always doing it with a pinch of fun helps.
Great. Well, listen, Jackie, look, thank you. Thank you for the effort you put into your presentation. So many brilliant ideas there that people can take. And again, the ultimate promotion, don't miss the next festival, 2nd to the 4th of July. Amazing. I'm even going to try to get there myself, Jackie. I just think what you're doing is specky. Thank you for your leadership. You've always been a great community builder. And I really do thank you for not just the difference you made in regional New Zealand, but the impact you're making as a leader, as a community builder in rural and regional Australia. Thank you. Go well. And may everyone from me have a fantastic Easter. It's been a great series. I'm sorry it's the end of series 4, but hopefully in the future we might be back. Back over to you, Ash, and for you to complete it.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys, and congratulations, Jackie. That was just amazing. If everyone could give Jackie a little bit of a clap in the emoji section, in the chat section, that would be great. You really were wonderful, and so much information there. There's just so much to look through, so thank you. As Peter said, happy Easter, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. This is the last session for this series, but we'll have a bit of an off season. We'll think through a couple of things that we can improve, a couple of things that we can do better, a couple of things we'd like to keep the same, and hopefully we'll see you on the other side. If you've got anything, any tips, tricks, any yarns, you can always send us an email, media@ruralaid.org.au. Big thank you to Peter and to Lindsay and to Alicia, everyone behind the scenes here at Rural Aid. It does make it nice and easy when we've got such a wonderful team of professionals to bring you these live chats every week, and a lot of work does go into them, so thanks to the team for making it happen, and thanks to all of the wonderful presenters that we've had on as well. It's just really been such a wonderful series, and I know that I've enjoyed every minute of it as well. So thanks so much, guys. We really appreciate it. Have a wonderful Easter, and we'll see you on the other side, hopefully. Hey, thanks so much. All the best.